How to change a top end on a Yamaha Blaster, which is a two-stroke four-wheeler. So setup, you're going to need some tools and parts. I usually buy Weisico top ends, which consists of a cylinder, piston, rings, wrist pin bearing, and some gaskets and a spark plug. So this is a little pricier, but it's worth it because it usually lasts a little longer, and I just buy it off eBay. Some tools you'll need a standard socket set with a ratchet, and then a 12mm socket, 8 and 10mm socket, and then a couple wrenches. You'll need a spark plug wrench too, and a compression tester. Disassembly, so just remove the plastics by taking out these bolts, remove the rear fender by taking out these 6 bolts, and then turn the petcock into the off position to stop the flow of gas so you can take the gas tank off without spilling gas everywhere. Then remove the spark plug boot and the head, which is just 6 bolts where that arrow is pointing. So then remove the carburetor and remove the spring from the exhaust flange in the exhaust so you can take the exhaust off. Then remove 4 bolts surrounding the cylinder so that you can slide the cylinder off, and then take the clutch cable off of the cylinder bolt. So then you're going to want to inspect your engine to make sure everything's running right and you don't have to replace everything or anything else besides the top end. So inspect the cylinder and the gasket. That gasket looks okay, and the cylinder is a little dark, but there's no scratches, so you're fine there. The top of the piston has a little bit of carbon buildup on it, which means it's probably running rich, but that's typically a normal thing for old pistons. Then this is what you really want to look out for. If you move that piston up and down, there's no clearance, but if there is, and it does have some play in it, then you probably need to replace your crankshaft or just the rod bearings, as that can lead to further problems in the future. So then, in order to inspect the reeds, you're going to want to take the carb boot off and the reed cage by removing these 4 bolts. So once you have that off, you're going to want to inspect the reed pedals and the reed cage clearance. So there's not a gap right there, which means you don't have to replace the reeds. And then inspect the spark plug. This is really important. So this spark plug has got a lot of carbon buildup on it and a lot of oil and gas, which means it's running a little too rich. I'm not getting the most performance out of my four-wheeler because of this, so I'm going to have to rejet my carburetor so that it's a leaner condition, which means put a smaller main jet in and maybe adjust the slide. We'll see. So assembly, it's basically the disassembly in reverse, except one of the key differences is putting the piston back in the cylinder. So in order to do that, you're going to compress these rings and then slide the cylinder gently over the piston. And I usually like to put some oil in there so that it slides on freely. And then when I'm trying to start it for the first time, it's got some lubricant in there so it doesn't mess anything up. So then put the gasket back on, slide the cylinder all the way over those 4 bolts, and then tighten all the head bolts down to about 20 foot-pounds of torque if you've got a torque wrench, or just do it by feel. And then so you're going to put the compression tester and you're going to screw the end of the hose into where the spark plug screws into, and then kick the engine over about 5 times until that needle stops moving, and it should be about 125 psi of pressure for a healthy engine. So we're pretty much finished. Just put the plastics back on, and then once you're done and you start the four-wheeler up, you're going to want to heat cycle it, which is just blipping the throttle a little bit, never letting it sit at idle or at a constant RPM. Just always have the RPMs varied, but never too high or too low, so that you can really get those rings seated, and heat the engine up, and then do it about 2 or 3 times, letting the engine cool between each time. And then for the break-in, everybody has different opinions on this, but I find it works best if you just go a little easy on the engine, get it heated up and put it under a little bit of load, but never like all out throttle. And then so I usually run it through about 2 tanks of gas, pretty light RPMs, and then once you're done with the break-in, you're going to want to change the oil and then you're ready to go.